Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode. I'm so excited to talk all about visual merchandising today. And in case you are an online boutique owner and you don't have a storefront, I want to encourage you to stick around and listen to this episode anyway, because to me, visual merchandising is visual. It's not just about being in a brick and mortar and optimizing your displays and your windows, but it's also about your live sales and your photo shoots and your websites. And the same principles apply whether you're online or you're brick and mortar. So today, my guest is Badeeha Jubeh. She is the founder of Retail Visual Identity. She is a member of the Boutique Hub. She's been a speaker at the Boutique Summit, and she is the go-to gal when it comes to merchandising. There is so much information packed in this episode, you guys. I hope you bring a notebook and take notes because you're definitely going to be inspired using both the retail art and the retail science side of your brain in today's episode. You're going to love it. Let's talk about your business, strategy, and the juicy details of what actually works, from mainstream fashion to fashion on Main Street and the entire ecosystem behind it. How do we scale your company and do it with the balance and the happiness that we all seek? Let's hear from those insiders, experts, and strategists that actually make it happen. I'm your host, Ashley Alderson from the Boutique Hub, and I can't wait to chat. All right, guys, for those of you who love the retail art side of the business and the retail art side of your brain, we know that we need both retail art and retail science, right? Well, we are speaking directly to the retail art side of your brain today as we talk about visual merchandising. Badeeha, I am so happy that you are with us today and can deep dive on this topic because I think this is something we all love about being in the boutique business. But even though we think we have a really good plan figured out for merchandising and visual identity, there's always more. There's always strategy. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this today. So thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I love that you said strategy. I'm all for that.
Yeah, when I think about successful retailers, right, there is truly the retail art and the retail science. And I know you do a really good job of pairing them together because there has to be a science, there has to be a strategy behind why things are the way they are, where we place things in our store, where we place things online. And I know you're going to give us a whole map of that process today. So before you do, walk us through the backstory. How did this become your passion?
So, when I first started in retail and I was 16, and I actually started with a cosmetic brand. A lot of it was just like really enjoying retail. Honestly, it was really enjoying working with the customers.
Yeah.
But then some days you're kind of drained. You don't want to like talk to people every day, but I love moving things around, and I could instantly saw the impact it had. And I think what actually got me into it was being able to like shift things and then see people drawn to it. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, they picked up exactly what I put there. Like that was my goal for the day, And so that's what drew me into it when I was much younger. I also did actually go to school for art and design.
Okay.
So my degree is in art and design. So a lot of being able to like put that together. But like you said too, like I'm also very strategic. And so being able to put strategy with my artsy side and see it impact and like make money off of it as well as really how I started. So that's how I started. But getting into it, since about that age, about 18, so I've been doing this for a long time. Doing visual merchandising, like specifically having that as like a challenge and seeing how it impacts businesses, that's what like pushed me into it. And that's what I really enjoyed doing. And then actually maybe like a year, so during COVID, right, a little bit over a year ago, got into working with boutique owners, so entrepreneurs who own their own businesses. I think during that time, I was just like, I was off work because I travel for work doing visual merchandising. And so we couldn't travel the country anymore, right? So I'm at home while we're like furloughed off work for a few months and not knowing like what we're going to do with traveling. I just saw how much boutiques were struggling and not knowing what to do and not knowing how to like find their customer and connect with them. And some were doing so amazing. And I was just drawn to like really wanting to help people who own their own business and were like so determined to make it work when you were seeing a lot of really large retailers letting people go, And even though I wasn't let go, I saw a lot of people get let go who were the people who taught me how to do my job well. And I thought, oh my gosh, like you can go at any moment. It doesn't matter how much of an impact you have. And I was just, I've always wanted this strong desire to work with people who absolutely love what they do and don't just see it as like their 9-to-5 job, like I love what I do. I enjoy it so much. And like being able to connect with other people who love what they do and want to impact their business is like what has driven me towards what I'm doing now.
I love that. Such a sincere passion behind,
Yes.
I would call it like curiosity. Like it's almost human curiosity and human behavior, and then seeing a direct correlation between that and sales and profit at the end of the
Hmm.
day. And with small businesses, who I think small businesses run the world, right? So I love that you
Right.
paired that together. Talk to me about when you start, because I know you work with lots of boutiques now, and when you walk in and you're going to work on a project, starting with your customer and knowing your customer, I'm assuming for you is probably the first place that you start. Talk me through that process and how you help boutiques start to identify who their customer really is so you can merchandise in that direction.
Yeah, that's definitely my step one. Like, if you don't know your customer, you can't really make great decisions to impact your customer. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people gear towards what they like as opposed to what their customer actually needs. And
Yeah.
so a lot of it is like, I mean, back to like the basics of like when you opened your boutique, you probably did your customer profile first, right? Like you needed to know who you're buying for. And so until you really, really know that customer, everything you're doing after that is like a big guessing game. So starting with
Yeah.
that, a lot of it too is, knowing your metrics. So not just like your customer if your boutique is already open and you have a brick and mortar or online, either way, knowing how your customer shops, like what do they touch, what don't they touch, like
Mm.
where do they walk through your boutique, like observing them. You may not know off the bat like how to make all those decisions, but you can still observe and see what's actually happening. So I always start with
Mhm.
that, like even if you need to take a step back and observe for a week and like make notes, like what are people touching, what are they doing, what aren't they looking at, and like you try to assess why. And then from that, knowing your metrics, like you have to know where you stand with everything, where you stand in like your average dollar sale and your units per transaction, because like going forward, you're going to have to goal set also. And so if you don't know where you stand, you're not going to make good decisions to goal set to where you actually want to be. It ends up just being like a free for all. Every day is different. You don't know why. And that's because there's no good plan in place because you don't know where to start or you didn't know where to start. So I always start with that. Yes.
Yeah, that's so good. Um, I always think like in retail boot camp, it's as simple as taking a piece of paper, drawing a
Yeah.
big square and a big circle around, here's my rounder and here's this
Mm-hmm.
display, and then just having your team literally map people as they come in the door. I also
Mm-hmm.
think about the metric, and tell me if there's more metrics I'm missing, but we talk about the boutique traffic plan and knowing what is my sales goal in this period of time divided by my average order value and then divided by my conversion rate. And then that's going to give me how many people do I need to have through the door in order to hit this number
Mm-hmm.
of transactions that are going to lead me to this average sales goal. And without actually doing the mapping like you're talking about and tracking from the get-go how many people are really coming in the door and how many people are really buying, we have no place to start. Are there other
Mm-hmm.
metrics you would add into that people should be looking at right off the bat?
No, I think you nailed it. Yeah, I mean, that's the strategy part of it, right? So you nailed it in the sense of like, yeah, you have to know all of those. And now for
Mm-hmm.
some people, they may be driving traffic, and they're like, well, I do see, 200 people a day or 500 people a day, depending on how large your boutique is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think some people almost like, well, this is our average for everything. And they take that to estimate how much money they're going to make, but that doesn't mean that that's as much money as you can make. That's what you're
Yeah.
averaging. So if you want to impact one of those metrics, like you have to pick, if you're like, traffic looks like I convert at 50%, right? I'm throwing a number out there. That's huge. Like
Yeah.
that's awesome. But I only have, 30 people that walk in the store. So now, if you had 100 people walk in, how much more money you can make, and then, you want to focus on bringing in traffic.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking at things like, all this ties hand in hand. So I think understanding your metrics and you kind of see which ones look like a little bit lower than where you'd like them to be. When
Yeah.
you're able to pick a metric, then you're able to understand what you're going to do to change and impact that metric. And then you can see like what your volume potential can be, not just
Yeah.
like what you average on a day to day of like, I expect to make $1,000 a day. Like, but what if your potential is 3 and you're just settling for 1,000?
Yeah, that's so good. It's not just about where we are, but where we're going at the end of the day
Mm-hmm.
and seeing what the potential is. So if that's me in my store and you're coming in to help, and now we're starting to go, okay, I know the metric and I want to start moving things around. How do I know where to start? So I'm not just throwing things at the wall and hoping they stick.
Yeah, so I always start with mapping. And I think, we've talked about this before too. Like you said, with mapping traffic, one, where people are shopping, that's going to help
Mm-hmm.
you map where you want your high ticket items to be, if you have higher ticket items. And then also like, as you know, planning out your collections, like you planned out your collections when you bought them. Now you have to plan where they're actually going to get placed. And so I always start with going from there. We know what we want to impact. I always narrow it down to what is it that I'm going to do visually that's going to impact that one metric, right? So we'll do one at a time. Like we're not going to impact every metric in the same day. We're going to pick one, which one's going to drive the most volume for us, right? And so there's different things that you can do visually depending on which metric you choose. You know, if you want to raise your UPT, then you're looking at how are you layering, how are you styling, how are you like inspiring a customer, you know, when you're putting together a collection. And now we're going to start with what's our collection going to look like? Where is it going to be placed? How are we going to accessorize it and style it and show the customer different ways to wear it, right? Mm-hmm. And so now when you've done all that, you have a better chance of being able to increase that metric. Like everything you've done is to focus on, if I'm going to show her something, I'm showing her 3 or 4 or 5, right? And that way I know she's going to leave with 2 or 3, right? But if you only show her one thing on each display, one and one and one, you're going to sell one. Or none, yeah. Or you don't sell any, right? If you're showing her 5 pieces, she may buy 3 pieces, right? So, you know, it's starting there, identifying your metric, and then we take it back to like which visual components impact that metric.
I love that. So let's break that down a little bit because if we're thinking about UPT, right? You were just talking about how do we get more products per transaction? We've got to show more. We only sell what we show. So take that back. I'm thinking of 2 main places this comes up in a store scenario. One is your cash wrap and your checkout experience. And the other is your actual like mannequin merchandising or your face outs. And I don't know if this drives you crazy. This is probably one of my biggest pet peeves is when I see pictures of storefronts and they have face outs and it's just a shirt hanging there. And there's no layering and there's no accessorizing. It's just like a shirt. And then there's maybe like 8 other shirts of a different color right behind that shirt. So talk to me about those two places and merchandising those 2 places.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that is so funny. I always notice that too when I like either see photos or when I walk into a boutique and I'm like, okay, you're showing me a top and then like another top and then another top. And my mind's going, okay, which top do I like most? So I'm going to buy one, right? Like your mind isn't like, oh my gosh, I love all these tops. I want all of them. My mind's like, oh, do I like any of them? One, like am I even drawn to any of them enough to stop and look? And if I do, which one do I like the most? It's like choosing which of the face outs you like best. But now when you can accessorize even your face outs, it doesn't even have to be your mannequins, you know, like as simple as what's on your front hanger, you know, when you can accessorize that. And that doesn't mean like, oh, I've got a top and I put a necklace on it. In some cases, yes, that's exactly how it goes. But sometimes it's like a t-shirt with a cardigan, with a necklace, you know, and you may, depending on your displays, you may have room to clip a pant onto it. You may have room where you can put a hat on top of it, right? Like depending on your fixturing that you have. Now you've gone from like your customer saying, oh, which of like these 3 face outs, like which do I like best, if any, to, oh my gosh, I love this outfit. Can I see myself wearing it? Oh my gosh, this is another outfit, like right next to it. And maybe you don't buy both full outfits, but you're like, oh my gosh, I have to have like the t-shirt and the sweater and the next outfit. Oh my God, I love the belt and the t-shirt, right? And that's how you've gone from like 0 to 1, right? Yes. Or possibly 5. Yeah. And it has to be consistent. It can't be your first 3 face outs that you're picking from. This has to be consistent throughout your store. Like your customers notice these things when they come in and they'll say like, oh my gosh, I just love coming in here because it's so beautiful. And it doesn't mean it's like just pretty. It's beautiful because they're like inspired by what you're showing them. And, you know, they even come in for ideas. Even if they don't buy right then and there, they become a future customer.
I just want to like shout everything you said from the mountaintops because it's so important. And seriously, Badeeha, when we do the merchandising module and retail bootcamp, people come back to us and they're like, I made so much money by making these super simple changes that were like, light bulb, should have been really easy from the get-go. But it's not just storefronts. So you're talking about like it's beautiful when you walk in, but I think about online sales as well. Like when I merchandise a live sale really well, when I merchandise a photo shoot really well, when I merchandise my website and inspire is the word you said for those outfits. Now I can look at that mannequin, I can look at that face out, I can look at the photo and go, yeah, maybe I wouldn't wear that t-shirt, but I would wear the cardigan over it and I would wear the belt that's with it. And oh yeah, I have a hat at home I could layer it with. I never thought about wearing it like that. And now you're selling not just the shirt, that was the goal, but all these other pieces as well. Where else in the store do you see this taking place that people commonly miss?
So you also had mentioned the cash wrap. Like if you don't have some small, easy pick up and go item at the cash wrap, like how many, okay, I'm totally the guilty person. I stand in line at Ulta and I'm like, oh yeah, great. This is where I find all the goodies. And I've gone from like, oh, I came in to buy a foundation. Now I have a foundation and a serum and a lip gloss and possibly a hair, a new hairspray. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to try all these little things. But they're like the $10 and under or $20 and under, like easy grab and go. And especially like going into holidays, having those easy grab and goes, like what can be added onto a gift. People are going to be shopping for themselves and shopping for gifts, like keychains, little accessories, like little jewelry gift boxes, things like that. Like people snatch that up so fast. I mean, I'm sure everyone for a while had masks, like, oh, you need a mask today, right? Because you have to wear one. So that was the thing for a while. So I think just keeping that in mind. But like you said, like other places, if you're thinking that way when you're styling a face out, then that's just how you think when you're styling anything. A mannequin, your top shelf displays, everything should feel cohesive. Even when you're talking about your website, your homepage, is it inspiring? Your storefront, your windows, are they inspiring? When your customer walks in the door, is it inspiring? And if it's not, you have to go back and figure out why. Is it that you're not telling a story? Is it just seem a little boring? Is the color a little dull and there's nothing of interest? Like going back to analyze that is what's going to help make those better decisions and just being consistent throughout.
Candy Club is bringing a unique and engaging candy store experience to your stores with delicious premium candy at affordable prices, providing a really great value to your customer. With the perfect appeal to moms and women and kids of all ages, Candy Club searches the globe to find the best tasting premium candy, seeking a classic candy flavor with a modern day twist, from chocolates to gummies to sours and to favorites. Candy Club is packed with innovation and excitement, and I'm telling you, my kids and I have eaten enough Candy Club to prove it personally. Visit their site for more sweetness at wholesale.candyclub.com. Yeah, let's go back to telling a story and just giving that experience for a second. If I could pick on one corporate kind of boutique feeling chain, actually, that I dislike their merchandising the most, it's Francesca's.
Okay,
Because it's merchandised by color. So nothing really tells a story, because I feel like I never go in and I buy a red top. I go in and I'm buying an outfit. I'm buying an experience. I'm buying the story that you're telling me about how I'm going to wear the red top, but I'm not going to like sift through a rack of red, all kinds of things and then pull out one thing and style it together. So I think using that as maybe a what not to do experience to turn into how do I tell a story? Is there like a formula or a way when you look at a store where you have different stories in different places of the store? How could I start to map that out?
Well, once you've decided on what your story is, so based on the merchandise that you've actually purchased, right, and then you have an expected date, when you want to launch it, say it's your new fall collection, so when you're actually planning where that's going in your store, I always plan by usually like 3 things. You can narrow it down, right? So you want a color story. Like we don't want to pick a theme and have it be fall, but we're showing like 8 different colors. It's not going to feel like fall. It's just going to feel like a hodgepodge of colors, right? And so color, print, and then price point. So if I were to pick 3, I would narrow it down by those 3. If I ever walk into a store and I want to filter what's happening to impact the sales coming in, I would filter by those 3. So if you're planning or making updates, so if you have a theme going and you have high ticket items, part of your collection, you've got displays, you've got your face outs, should be featuring your high ticket items. That's going to help you build on your ADS and your UPT. Now, maintaining that for it to be impactful would be choosing or narrowing it down to a color story and or a like printer pattern. Like you wouldn't mix 4 different prints together. It's also going to feel like a hodgepodge, like no one's really going to understand what the theme is. And so when you can keep it that way, it's what keeps it impactful. Just like with sell-through, if you started that way and, there's always also, I should say, the rule of 3. So if you're merchandising a wall and you are focusing on a certain color story, and it may be tons of neutrals, but you also have a pop of color, balancing 3 pops of that color is what keeps it feeling cohesive. So planning that out and like being mindful of like, okay, yellow is my pop of color and like a wall of neutrals, balancing yellow in 3 different places within that collection, right, is what makes it feel like a collection, and then also makes it stand out as, oh, the color is yellow. Like that's the trend color. That's the seasonal color, whatever it may be, or print, it could be a print also.
Yeah, that's really helpful. When you think about like the most common pattern, I've always been told that people come in and come to the right first. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about like making sure those stories are in the right places in your high traffic areas, do you find that that's true? That it's typically people come in and navigate to one side of the store or one area of the store more often than not?
Honestly, from my experience, it depends on the store. I think within this store, like if you've assessed
Mm-hmm.
your own store, you'll see that people tend to go one way over the other. I don't find it like to be true all around. And that's only because of like unique store fixturing. I've worked with
Yeah.
lots of really unique fixtured stores, and sometimes there's just like a pillar, like
Yeah.
weird things. And so you just go the other way, right? You almost go to like what the closest collection is. If like one side of the store, maybe you turn left and the featured wall is like right there to your left, but the other side is like really further back, you go left.
Yeah.
So it's almost, so I can't say for sure. And I say that because I've worked in lots of stores in person where I've actually
Mm-hmm.
observed to see where customers go. And within that store, it's consistent. And sometimes their door is also off centered. So the customer
Yeah.
off centered left, the customer just goes left. So
Yeah. I want to
there's
quote
things that throw that
Zoolander.
off.
I want to quote Zoolander so bad when you say, "Oh my gosh, he turned left." I just want to full on movie quote you right now.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
I love that. That has to be a meme. You've got to make that and post it in the group.
I'm gonna need to make that a boutique meme.
Yes.
Yes. What about dead zones? If you know and you've identified a dead zone in your store, what are some great ways to bring that zone or that area back to life?
I usually use displays. I've had lots of, again, unique stores that I've set, and usually like what makes the dead zone is that there ends up being like a weird block in the wall, or it ends
Mm,
up like being right around the corner, or there's a pillar and it kind of blocks like the focus of it, so people just shift, like once they hit the pillar they turn the other way, right? But it's like, no, there's more. So I
yeah.
usually use it for displays, or if you can even, I'll stick with that. I usually use it for displays. There's lots of other ways around it,
Hmm.
where you can utilize whatever your unique architecture is and actually make it engaging to pull people towards it, but it's easier to use it for displays.
Yeah, that's helpful. Are there common displays? Like I know you talked about you could use anything for a display, right? And I know you've used lots of different
Mm-hmm.
racking systems too. Are there any that you love most, love least, or feel like there's best practices for? Like, for instance, the old rounder, good old days, right?
Oh my
There's
gosh.
definitely some best practices and some worst practices. But are there any most common you'd care to share, either best or worst?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen a rounder in so long. Yeah, I'm like envisioning like Ross and Marshalls, like if you were to go in there, you'd
Yes.
see a rounder and it's sized out. Yeah,
When I
so
was a
it's
kid, I would
not that,
hide in the middle of them. Like my
yes,
mom
I
would take me
know.
shopping. I'd hide in the middle and she'd be like, "Where'd you go?" And ooh, I
Yeah,
would pop
and you
out.
jump out like, "Oh, here
Yeah,
I am."
I'm
Yeah, I
here.
used to do that too. Yeah, yeah. So those, I'd say it's not that there's best or worst. I think anytime you have anything that you can adjust, like being able to
Hmm.
adjust your fixturing, I think is huge. I've seen some really great like permanent fixturing that can't be adjusted. That's really
Hmm.
beautiful, but it does tie your hands visually. When you need to, if with sell through, like I'm sure in the past months, people have had tons of issues with their deliveries. And now you're like, it starts to look like you're empty. And how many
Yeah,
times does a customer come in and say, oh my gosh, are you closing because of like product sell through and new inventory isn't coming in? And so you have your hands tied with that. You get stuck with if you do have all jet rails, your bars look empty. And if that's a permanent fixturing, there's not a lot you can do with that. So if you have adjustable fixturing, I think that's the easiest. There's tons of ways of keeping your store looking full and impactful with that. I will say not necessarily type of fixturing, but something that I hate
hmm,
is fixturing that isn't accessible. And there's a lot of that. And that's hard to see when I come into a
hmm.
store and I look up and I'm like, okay, I can't reach that product. I know myself. I'm not going to go get someone and ask them to grab me something just to even see if I like it. I'm going to be like, oh, that's up there. Okay, keep on walking.
Yeah,
And I just move past it. And that's hard. I see a lot of photos of
yeah.
boutiques with product that isn't accessible.
Yeah. Eye
And
level
and
is eye
that's
level.
yes, exactly. I know not everyone agrees with that. Uh, but money, it'll show itself if everything's at eye level. You'll understand how people shop. I mean,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, there's going to be someone who's going to ask you to get it for them, but you mentioned Francesca's. They do that too. They've got like above all their racks are like shelves
Yeah.
of handbags. And I was like, I mean, I'm not going to ask you to give me the handbag. I can't tell if I love it yet. I
Yeah.
can't touch it and feel it. And I'm like, oh, whatever. Keep on walking, you know? And so that's how the brain works. And if yeah, I know it's a space thing sometimes, but it's got to
Yeah.
be accessible.
I totally agree. I think when there's high level pieces, it's not about the pieces that are accessible to buy, but it's about inspiration. And I think like
Hmm.
when I'm in a vendor event, right, and I only have a 10 by 10 booth, like you have to go up, but that doesn't mean double racking. That means
Hmm.
signage and lighting and displays and what else you can use as
Right.
a silent seller without actually having product that high where it's not accessible.
Yes, 100%. Hmm.
What about, speaking of signage, I know that's another big piece of merchandising. It's the silent seller that's in the store. Do you have any best practices when it comes to signage throughout stores?
Yeah, so for signage, there's so many different ways you can go, and I'm sure the whole topic is just really confusing for a lot of people. I think you also have to understand is not everyone reads signage, so when they do, it has to be loud. If you want people to read your signage, it just does. It has to be loud. That's why big retailers use bright red marketing, right?
Hmm.
It's like the color you're drawn to. I've seen people switch to gray, silver, white, and then you can't read the print on it, and then people don't
Yeah.
even notice the sign. So I just think it has to be easy to read. It has to be bold and in your face, right? If you're using signage, especially if it's for like a price point, a discounted price point, like that's got to be bold. If you can't make it to a customer to tell them what your promo is for the day or specialty items you've got going on at a special price, like you guys are going to do Pink Friday, like
Yeah.
if that is not bold signage, it's not going to move. People aren't going to be drawn to it. It's going to be like everything else in the store.
Yeah, that's so helpful. Bold and the silent seller. What about other experiences related to that? Like I think about coming in and the lighting and the sound and the smell without turning into Abercrombie and
Hmm.
like overwhelming everyone with cologne, right? What are other ways we can draw the senses in when they come into a storefront?
Yeah, that's so funny because as you said, lighting and sound and smell, and my brain went to Abercrombie, and it's dark and really strong scented, and you like can't see anything you're touching, but there's one spotlight in a store.
You think someone's going to
So
be like making out in the corner when you walk in?
I
You're like, am I going to come
know.
into like it's the
Where
back of the
am
school
I?
bus? Yeah, totally agree.
Right? Yes, you're like, I don't understand. Am I shopping for clothes here, or like, am I here to hang out? Like, you don't know what's happening. Yeah, you know what? That's so funny that you say that because I'm very big on those things too, and that's a lot of the visual elements that people don't think of.
Hmm.
Everything you're doing is to create an ambiance for your customers. So however you want them to feel in your store has to
Yeah.
be projected by everything you're doing in your store. Like that comes from windows to your displays to the stories you're telling to your lighting to what it smells like. Like it's all an experience. And your customers remember the experience. Like they may not even remember what you're selling, but they're going to remember the experience and like the ideas they got when they walked in your store. And that's how they're going to remember you. Like that's the entire experience of your boutique and online. Like I know, smell, sound, all that, but like
Yeah.
color, the photos, the quality, all that, like people remember that. That's what brings them back.
Yeah. People don't remember what they purchased from you, but they remember how
Mm-hmm.
you made them feel
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day. I think that's so helpful. And especially helpful. I know we're going into the holiday season, the biggest shopping season of the year. Do you have any advice for retailers as they plan their merchandising experience for the holidays?
Yeah, my biggest advice is planning. Like you have to plan it. Like as you're thinking about, I think I had talked to a few boutiques about this too, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even think to do that." But as you're planning, like, what are you doing a big promo? Like, what's your big offering? Are you doing a gift with purchase? Like,
Hmm.
they may have the marketing idea in mind. I think some people plan marketing, but they don't plan the visuals to execute around that.
Yeah.
Like we're only doing half of the work it takes to, and then maybe we do achieve the result, but we may not achieve the result we're looking to get. And that's because you missed half of like the merchandising portion. So if you're doing a big promo, like what are you showing? How are you going to show it? How is it going to be like loud and proud? Going into holidays, especially like brick and mortars, you really have to think about your replen strategies. Like you may not think you're going to be as busy, but having all that planned out, like you have to plan the days that you're going to like restock your floor, that you're going to check all your displays, like have a designated person if you're scheduling staff, you know, having all that planned out is what's going to help you achieve that goal. Like if you're, you know, pick a number, it could be 10,000. I'm just going to make something up. If your goal is 10,000 for the day, then you need to work backwards and think, okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to plan to hit 10,000? Because it's not going to be just winging it and seeing what happens and hope that because traffic came in, we're going to hit 10,000. Like that's how you lose sales, right? Maybe you drew in the traffic, but your displays weren't going to sell you 10,000. You weren't staffed to sell 10,000. You know, you didn't add your cash wrap items. Your displays weren't accessorized. You didn't replan your floor. Now you don't have sizes. You're not going to hit your goal if you don't put all those things in order and plan them out ahead of time. I think planning is just a huge miss, and we plan one part, but we don't think of like, is everything in line to make that goal now?
Yeah, that's so helpful. And when you think about, you know, having a storefront and you have new team members that are working on the floor, and everyone wants to have the opportunity to update the window display or to do this display or that display. And that's great. But what you said just should have lasting impact, because it's not just about doing the display, but it's about planning everything else that comes along with the display to help that display actually be successful at the end of the day. So very, very good point there. I hope you guys that are listening today have a page of notes. I even have notes as I'm thinking about, oh my gosh, yes, like I haven't even thought of that. So Badeeha, I know you are a service provider member of the Boutique Hub. So anyone who's listening can find you inside of the Boutique Hub. You're also very active on Instagram. Will you let us know your Instagram handle so everyone can follow you there as well?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram under Retail Visual Identity. So you'll see me in there. I always share tons of free tips in every post. You can find me there and you can send me your questions there too.
I love it. We'll link that up, and also your provider profile at the Boutique Hub. I know you work with lots of Boutique Hub members as well. Badeeha, this has been so helpful. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, and we will see you inside of the Hub soon. And if anyone has not caught all the sessions from the Boutique Summit, they can find you there as well, since you were a guest speaker this year. We appreciate you so much. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We hope that you loved it. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a rating and review down below for a chance to be one of our featured listeners each and every week. For more information on our spirit of community over competition and how to access complete show notes and bonus downloads from our guests, head on over to theboutiquehub.com and join the community. We'll see you next week.